Okay, welcome everyone to Progressive Discussions, Hard-Hitting Truth. I am your host, James P. Madonna, and I am here with the one and only Gary W. Owens. How are you this week, sir?
Doing pretty good, and you?
Good, good. Since we've been on a roll with the series of very deep shows, very educational, very hard-hitting.
Right.
We might as well go with it, and because honestly, since my original co-host passed away, the other substitute co-hosts that I've had, they're good. I mean, you know, their heart's in the right place. They try to be as progressive as they can,
right?
But their desire to put their opinions and their takes on things publicly came to an abrupt end, and they have a greater desire for fun and frolic and rock concerts and things like that. But
right.
You know, which is fine. You know, it's their business. You know, I mean, it was good. The shows were decent. I'm not saying they were bad, but you know, with you, we've kicked it up several notches with progressive discussions, like Emerald Lagasse says. We've kicked it up several notches, not just a few. So I just want to start off by saying I want to talk about two things. First, these right-wing evangelical so-called born-again religious freaks, zealots, whatever you want to call them. I had a debate and then an argument with a man that goes by the name of Blue Devil for Life. Blue Devil for Life. Yeah, interesting. And it was on the Exorcist Bishop Brian, the one of the stars of the paranormal show Ghost Adventures on the Travel.
Oh yeah, I like to watch that show.
Yeah, I once in a while I chat with Exorcist Bishop. He's the heavy guns they call in when somebody is demonically possessed or a building is, you know, or maybe a doll is cursed, like, you know, like something similar to Annabelle.
Right.
He has a whole process that he goes through. What I like about him, besides being a theologian, or if there is such a word, a theologian wizard, is that he is not embraced by the Roman Catholic Church because he says things that they don't care for.
Exactly.
Being that they're a cult, probably the biggest cult in the history of mankind.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, so Blue Devil for Life. He says to Bishop Brian, he says, you know what? I like to see folk singing, guitar playing, this and that, and blah blah blah. All this, you know, during church service. You know, he likes to get loud and emotional. You know, like remember Steve Martin when he says "yakety yak, God's a talking back," and he's dressed in white. You know,
right.
So I got sarcastic and I said, well, what's next? We're going to throw in, you know, jugglers and mimes, and why don't we have a comedy hour or open mic, talent show? Why don't we put a disco ball over the altar, do the moonwalk and everything? He got pissed. He says, how dare you, you arrogant, smug, bigot. You're a bigot. How dare you mock us, you know, born again, whatever they call themselves.
Irony.
Yeah, it's like so Bishop Brian says, if you want to do that during church service, that's your right to prefer it and to accept it. But he says, I believe in the more quiet, laid back, non ostentatious, like me. Like, for those that are theologians, it does say in the Bible to keep your prayers private and not to show off. because usually hypocrites do that. So, I mentioned that too. He got really upset. So he called me all kinds of names. You're this, you're that. So he was playing the victim. And I said,
Oh boy.
nobody has proved anything yet. Nobody, like my late co-host used to say, no one has proven yet that their God exists.
Right.
So for this guy to get all upset, and I said, and then I mentioned the thing that annoys me the most. Why do right-wing evangelicals, zealots, put their arms up in the air and sway them? Is this some kind of like a Wi-Fi antenna to God, to heaven? It's like, and then they start speaking in tongues.
Yeah.
I said, you people are out of your minds. I said,
Yeah. The Pentecostals are notorious for doing that because on my mom's side of the family, they're primarily Pentecostals, and they do that speaking in tongues. And I've been to a church service where they do that, and it is kind of scary and freaky. It's almost like it's a cult seance. That's what it's like.
It's a seance. It's a seance. No, actually, this guy actually likes all those people because they vote for him. That's right. All the freaks can come out of the woodwork because that means votes for old Trumpy. Votes for old Trump. So anyway, yeah, so he got so upset. And Bishop Brian, I had to calm him down and appease him. Why? Because Bishop Brian is on a big network with sponsors. I'm just assuming this is why Bishop Brian was so nice to him and felt sorry for him and made me look like a bully, because he's on that show, The Ghost Adventures, with Zach Bagans and the whole crew, and there's sponsors, and you got to make nice and walk on eggshells when you're a celebrity. Personally, I don't give a shit. You know,
George Carlin didn't, so why should we?
Exactly. George Carlin and Frank Zappa did not care what others thought. So,
well, he did to an extent, but he tried to be tactful. He was talking to you one-on-one, but during his shows, he really could have gave a fuck less.
All those things I said on Twitter were part of my sarcastic sense of humor, and I was trying to prove a point that if you want to start throwing scriptures at me in your defense, know what you're talking about, because
thank you.
Jesus himself said you're supposed to go pray in private, and it's between you and your maker, and don't be jumping around hallelujah with the tambourines and the rattles. Oh, and the guy, the Baptist preacher that brings live rattlesnakes during church service and starts dancing with them, and then his wife got bit and died. One guy, and he's dancing with him. I'm taking up serpents, the devil. God is going to make the venom, is going to neutralize the venom. Yeah, right. Yeah, my ass. It's going to neutralize.
Right. Just
so anyway, it's a cult. And the guy played the victim, and I'm the bully, and I don't care because I actually meant everything I said, and that was that. That was Blue Devil for life. By the way, it's going on Twitter, Blue Devil for life. I hope you watch the show and get even more upset with me.
Yeah, especially from a diehard agnostic atheist who is a
yeah,
for props.
Blue Devil for life, even though it's red. You better get used to red.
Yep, better get used to red, and not in the Republican sense.
Well, here's Blue Devil for life. You're in here.
Right.
You're all. So anyway. The other thing is, please, folk, all you people out there that happen to stumble upon the show, don't mistake in any of the Democratic candidates for 2020 as being true progressives like they claim. Exactly. They're not. They're centrist, moderate, establishment, Democrats. They are beholden to the oligarch. They are corporate whores. if they don't believe in free health care and public college education, and they don't believe in taxing the top 2% and making them pay the burden, not burden, making them pay most of the taxes. If you don't believe in all of those things, if you don't believe in helping the poor and taking care of the elderly and the disabled and our veterans and making sure there's no homeless people in the United States, if you're not for all those things, as well as not being a damn racist with immigrants of color, you're not a true progressive.
Right.
They're using the progressive word definition as a way to pander for votes, but they're not real progressives, like you have said in the past.
Right. But I'd like to bring out a Marx quote about religion. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, the spirit of a spiritless situation. It is the opium of the masses.
Yeah, I mean, Jesse Ventura said that organized religion is for weak-minded people.
Right. But I want to brush on a little bit before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show.
Yeah.
What he meant by that it's the opium of the masses, as in it's like a drug. And if you see the way super religious people act, especially when they do like what you were talking about, it's like they're in a drunk or in some kind of drugged stupor whenever they act like this. But that's not really what he was talking about, although he, indirectly said that. But what he really was talking about is how it's like a drug that really just makes you so detached from material conditions. Like it prevents you from seeing things as they really are. It's like it puts the rose-colored shades on and prevents you from seeing what really needs to be seen. That is how he meant it.
The ostrich with the head in the sand, the Clydesdale with the blinders. In other words, you don't see reality. It's like a virtual reality mask.
Right.
So you don't see things for what they really are. So, I mean, like being on, I guess, what, LSD or something?
Not necessarily like LSD. It's just like, it makes you so detached from material conditions, and it's very addictive. It's like it makes you want more of it, and it makes you complacent. So it's like it gives you this answer, but it's just a very empty, hollow answer. It's like it gives you the concept of good versus evil without it actually really being what it really is. It's like, oh, it's the God that's up in the sky, and he's trying to do good, but it's the man down below with the pitchfork and the horns that's evil. When in reality, good versus evil is something that man created.
Dante's Inferno is where they got that the place of torment, and with what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a little kid, they sent me to Catholic school. I didn't go. Yeah, but I didn't go. I only went a few times because I didn't,
Oh God!
Yeah,
that moment when you want the separation of church and state, and the church and state, particularly the education system, are coming together. That is a recipe for disaster.
You're going to get a kick out of this. I opened up the little book they gave me, and lo and behold, it was a photo of what they thought of what God looked like. It was the old man with the long white beard, the Saint Nicholas, Kris Kringle looking guy with the white robe. And what was he doing? He was using one of the clouds as a lounge chair. He was sitting back on a cloud.
Oh boy!
And it's like in at that time in Catholic Church, all of the angels and they all looked European. They all had the current warriors' armor that existed at the time. The artists, the artisans, who I imagine got paid by the Catholic Church to make statues, and then the stained glass and all that, and Michelangelo doing the chapel, but they all looked European with current Renaissance European swords and armor and everything. And of course, with the white wings, they had to be white. They were very light skinned. They had blue eyes, all the statues.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then when I went to Venezuela as an adult, that time, Margarita Island, Caracas, way before Hugo Chavez, the Virgin Mary statues and Jesus statues and the statues of angels, they were all brown skinned. They looked like Latin Americans from Venezuela.
Or Middle Eastern.
Right. They spoke Aramaic at that time, which
Right.
was like an ancient language that I assume was separate from Hebrew.
Right, right.
So, but anyway, everybody thinks that the creator looks like their people. Every culture thinks that their race and their culture is number one, and God favors them the most. Just like all those songs, John Philip Sousa, March, Kate Smith sings "God Bless America" and blah 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 blah. Everybody thinks they're number one. They're the best. The Greeks that own the diners over here thinks everything Greek is the best. Italians off the boat think everything Italian is the best. Everybody thinks that they're the best, their culture is the best, and God looks like them.
Well, we'll brush on that in a future video about cultural Marxism and how that's one of the biggest flaws ever to come out of anything Marxist related. But anyway,
let's get to the meat and potatoes.
Get back to what I was telling you about with religion being the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, the opium of the masses. Religion and socialism and communism are going to be very hostile to each other. And this was some light was shedded onto this by not only my research, but I was watching its YouTube channel where they talk about the Marxist-Leninist worldview, but it's by theologic historians, I should say. Oh, your camera looks like it's gone out of focus.
All right, how's it now? It's
there we go.
It's a Hangouts thing.
All right. Yeah. As they were talking about it, this is what they had to say about it. The problem with socialism and communism is not that it's an inherently flawed system. It's a problem of atheism. And that is what, makes it so hostile to each other, is one's looking at it from a religious standpoint, the other one's looking at it from a non-religious standpoint, and how the two are very antagonistical to each other. And that is why religion really, in a lot of ways, despises socialism and communism, and why we see a lot of these right-wingers who are especially religious come out and denounce socialism and communism, saying this and the other, and spreading false lies and propaganda and stupid bullshit like that. Because it's like the drugs are speaking. When you see the drug known as religion speaking through these people, you can definitely tell they're addicted to it, and that they're really not seeing things the way that they should be seen. And that here is something that is coming along to get them off of this drug and fix their problems, but they're so antagonistical to it. Like, that drug addict who has a problem and acknowledges that he or she has a problem, but refuses to go to rehab or do what is necessary to get off the drug. Yeah, it's one of those type of situations.
Oh, by the way, I was also accused of being self-righteous and sanctimonious because I'm making myself better than the evangelicals that go, woo.
Mm-hmm.
See how deluded the human mind can easily be. They're lemmings. They're just lemmings.
Right. What I just now said about it sums it up perfectly. So the much more fun but yet educational, historical, and factual part of the video is, what would have happened if the Soviet Union and socialism and communism never fell? And what would that mean for material conditions currently here in 2019? I know we talked about, the history of the Soviet Union in the previous video, and we talked about right up until the end of what really caused it to fall. But what if that did not happen? What if there was something in history that could have turned the tide to where that would not have happened, to where the Soviet Union never would have fallen, the Eastern Bloc would not have fallen, the satellite Soviet states would not have fallen, and any new socialist or communist countries would still be thriving today. So what could have been done differently? So let me bring up my notes here, because this is going to have to be broken up into two different videos, because as I did the research on it and jotted down notes, I quickly realized, there's a lot that needs to be discussed here. And I kind of underestimated just how much really needs to be discussed. All right. So the idea of this new alternate history of what we're going to call it is, the name of it is going to be, What If Communism Never Fell? The Second Soviet Revolution. All right. So to give a pretext for all of this, we're going to go back to the ending of World War II. So after the end of World War II and, the Soviet Union and the United States defeated the Nazis, as well as Mussolini and fascist Italy and Imperial Japan. And then there was the policy of containment at the end of World War II, since communism began its spreading throughout Europe. That specter that Marx talked about, that specter that's haunting Europe, the specter of communism, is now coming to fruition. And the United States, we cannot have this. We have to have a policy of containment. And we saw exactly how well that played out. And in fact, if anything, it just empowered it that much more to be spread. It was at that moment when, the people of the Soviet Union, as well as the Eastern Bloc and other socialist communist states, quickly realized, the United States is turning imperialistic against us. So now we're actually really seeing imperialism that Marx had talked about. So now we're going to have to do everything in our power to thwart this evil plot, so to speak. So in this timeline, the events of the 1950s and the 1960s play out exactly as they would. There's the Sino-Soviet split of the 1950s. There is North Korea coming in 1950, Maoist China in 1949. And then there's involvement in Vietnam, where Vietnam is wanting to become communist. There's the Bay of Pigs, this and the other. But something turns the tide in socialist and communist history. So let me go back to my notes here. Okay, so as we had talked about in the previous video about what really made it fall, how social democracy was slowly being introduced and how it was just slowly, it wasn't like it was just so brought out in everyone's face. It was introduced slowly, and it was just chipped away until Gorbachev sealed the deal, and that was all she wrote. So in this timeline, social democracy does come in the 1960s, but in the 1970s, there is what is called the new Bolsheviks that emerge in the Soviet Union. They see the current Soviet government as evil and corrupt, that they are now getting in bed with the United States, and they see that ultimately there is going to be the fall of the Soviet Union as well as socialism and communism throughout the world. So they come into fruition in the 1970s, and they spread their ideas. Well, since the current Soviet government at this time sees them as a faction of the Communist Party, and factions are not allowed. They are outright banned, since Stalin was completely against factions, and other various socialist and communist writers outright banned factions. The current Soviet government sees these people as dissenters and as traitors, and they are quickly suppressed by any means necessary. Well, at this time, when the new Bolsheviks are spreading their ideas throughout the Soviet Union, it is quickly riling up the workers and the masses, as well as it's also gaining attention from other politicians of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and it's also getting the military riled up. So at this time in the 1970s, we see dissent, we see disdain and distrust for the current Soviet government because of what the ideas of the new Bolsheviks have now presented. So in an effort to suppress them by any means necessary, the current Soviet government opens fire on protesters, people in the street saying, we've had enough, we want a new system of government. give us our new system of government. And if you don't, we will fight against you. Well, the current Soviet government sees that as a threat. Protesters are killed in the streets. That makes people more and more angry. And then by about the mid-1970s, that ignites the second Soviet revolution, or the second Bolshevik revolution, so to speak. So in this time, this is where we see the new Bolshevik ideas really being pushed. People are fighting each other in the streets over these ideas. It's very, very violent and very bloody. It costs, I don't know how many lives it would cost, probably in the tens of thousands, probably not millions, but at least tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of people would die during this revolution. But it would come to an end with the second Bolshevik revolution coming in, and there being a new Soviet government. Social democracy is completely eradicated. Everything that was along those lines are completely gotten rid of. Any politicians that were of the old Soviet government are either re-educated, put into prison, or executed and made examples of. That foreign intervention in our country will not be allowed. And if it does happen, do not expect anything good to happen. So with that event, it completely changes the way that socialism and communism would advance in the 1970s. So this would happen and be completed by about the late 1970s. So in the 1980s is when we really see the big push towards new socialist and communist states. Now, the Soviet Union is getting back to Marxism-Leninism, Maoist China. Mao does not become reactionary. The arduous march or the collapse of the Soviet Union does not happen. We see things like Vietnam definitely winning the war against the United States. We see, getting back to Maoist China, they are doing really well. Mao does not become reactionary. Mao and his Gang of Four are not ousted from power. The Eastern Bloc is doing really well. And at this point, since they're not really social imperialistic, they turn more of, we're going to start leading by example to actually spread our revolutionary ideas and help out new socialist or communist governments. But we're not going to do it in a very imperialistic manner. We're not going to fight the U.S. and try to outwit the United States with the Cold War. But that ultimately spells trouble for the United States and its allies, as well as imperialism, because during the Second Bolshevik Revolution, the United States tries to overthrow the new Bolshevik government that was trying to be brought in, and they ultimately tried to corrupt them, but it backfired miserably. And I do mean miserably. So as there is the expansion of new socialist and communist governments throughout the 1980s, the new Bolshevik government now starts spreading propaganda throughout the world and really exposes the war crimes of the United States, as well as imperialism and all that good stuff. And that quickly spells trouble for the United States, because at this time, the Soviet Union now exposed the Gulf of Tonkin lie, and how the Vietnam War was just an imperialistic war against a country that wanted to do what it is that it wanted to do. And as that happened, it riled up the American people here in the United States. We see the new emergence of the counterculture. But in this instance, the counterculture is not this, marijuana smoking, beer drinking, LSD taking, hippie, flower power love type of counterculture. No. These are radicalized counterculture. This is the radicalized counterculture. Because, during the 1960s, there was talk about socialism and communism here in the United States, but there really wasn't that real revolutionary potential. It was talked about. It's like it was all talk and no action. Well, in this timeline, it goes beyond talks. And since the new counterculture has become radicalized, we see a big push for socialism and communism here in the United States. Which, in the 1980s, if that were to actually happen, that really would spell disaster for the United States as well as imperialism, wouldn't you think? And at this time, the war in Afghanistan that the Soviets got involved in, they would go into Afghanistan, but it would not bankrupt them in any way. The United States would do everything in their power to try to have guerrilla fighters or insurgents to try to fight them, but it ultimately would fail flat on its face. We don't see in this instance where the Soviet Union is bad off. And in fact, if anything, they're growing, but they're growing in all the right ways. They're not racking up all this debt to try to, outspend the United States like what they try to do in the Cold War. But in this instance where they tried to infiltrate during the Second Bolshevik Revolution and how it backfired, it turned the Cold War hot. And now the Soviet Union and any new socialist or communist countries now have their eyes set on the United States. So in the 1980s, the world is in complete disarray. The Soviet Union is doing great. Socialism and communism is doing great. It's expanding throughout Asia. It's expanding throughout Europe. It's now expanding throughout Africa and Latin America. I mean, this is spelling disaster for capitalism and imperialism as we know it. So, as the 1980s come to a close, we see at this time that the United States and imperialism is completely outgunned and surrounded. Because when I was telling you about how the new Bolshevik government blasted propaganda throughout the world and really exposed the United States as well as imperialism for all of its class antagonisms and its war crimes. I mean, it really has nowhere left to run. And I want to stop here because in the second part, that's where we'll go more into what will be known as the Second American Revolution and how socialism and communism would ultimately undermine capitalism and imperialism in the United States, and then socialism would be implemented in most of the world, but there would still be one stronghold left. The Middle East.
Right.
And that would have to be brushed on a second video because that would be a bit more extensive.
Well, the the Saudi monarchy would be an example of extreme right-wing imperialism, correct?
Well,
in its most radical extremist form.
Well, we talked about that. Where ISIS got a lot of their ideas is from Wahhabism.
Right.
And that was, the right-wing Islamic ideology that was very anti-imperialistic, but it was anti-imperialistic for all the wrong reasons. It was anti-imperialist because it didn't want any kind of foreign intervention to corrupt Islam. Big, big difference between corrupting religion and corrupting a system of government. Right. Big difference.
And recently, the leader of ISIS put out a video, a much older leader, heavier, with gray in his beard. This is current news. The monarchy has its wealth because of big oil, which is most likely why the right wing in this country and corporate fascism and of course Donald Trump has so much of a high interest in the Saudis and not pissing them off, and
right,
and sucking up to them, being sycophants, so to speak. And the same thing you were discussing Venezuela last week. We brought up big oil in Venezuela, and there's always a money trail to follow when it comes to capitalism.
Well, I mean, since I wanted this to, be like a factual and educational video, we'll open this up for discussion. I threw out the idea of the second socialist revolution, second Bolshevik revolution. What would your take be on it? Like, what ideas would you contribute to it as to a possible alternate history?
Oh, you mean if the Soviet Union did not fall?
Yeah, like the way that I presented. Like, add on to what I presented.
Well, China, do you think the Soviet Union would have eventually became more like mainland China is today, kind of embracing both and becoming like what would you call mainland China? What would it be? Would it be democratic socialism? Would it be a blend of social, communism with a touch of capitalism added to it?
Well, China right now, in its current form, they don't have anything socialist related on the fact that they have state control. In fact, if anything, they're state capitalist, which is, if you want to think about it, more capitalistic than what the United States is. The United States has free market capitalism. China has state capitalism.
Okay, so China was really corrupted by corporate America, pretty
Right. I get this argument that China is socialist or communist just because state ownership of something. No. Yeah, in socialist and communist countries, you have state ownership over the means of production, and the proletariat has control of the government. But here's where it ultimately falls. If you look at the way China is run, it's not really controlled by the people. It's controlled by the Communist Party, and they're only communist in name, and that's as far as it goes. And that's where their argument falls short of. Just because there's state ownership does not mean socialism. Socialism would mean state control, but who would have control over the state? And in this case, it's state capitalists who have control over the government in China.
Interesting.
Yes, there is free market capitalism in China right now, but it is so heavily dominated by state capitalism.
Right.
So to answer your question, would it become like a hybrid of like mainland China, or would it take on something like mainland China? No, and here's why. If there was a second Bolshevik revolution and people went out in the streets and fought and killed each other like it would be in like a civil war over these ideas because they did not want to have their country overthrown by capitalism and imperialism, then why would they even have something like that in the first place? It would completely undermine it. Because it would be very insulting and a big slap in the face for all those people who would have died in that revolution fighting for it. And that's ultimately what fueled the fire for the second Bolshevik revolution in this alternate history, was seeing the way that the Soviet Union was going, the way the Soviet government was going, was a big slap in the face to Lenin and all those who fought in the first Bolshevik revolution.
Now, when did getting back to what you mentioned about religion and communism or socialism always like bucking heads, when did the Russian Orthodox Church officially reopen?
Well, it wasn't really closed under the Soviet government because in the Soviet Union, state atheism was the religion of the government, which meant that all public displays of religion were not allowed. That does not necessarily mean that religion was prohibited. Religion was not prohibited and never has and probably never will be in a socialist or communist country. It was, if you want religion, fine, but keep it to yourself.
Oh, so in other words, let's say St. Basil's Cathedral continued to have masses inside.
Right.
They just cannot display their opinions outside of the church.
Right. Well, I mean, you could talk about religion could be talked about in your own home, but yes, you could have homes in a socialist or communist country because that's what people say is you can't own a home, you can't own a car, you can't do this, you can't do that bullshit. And let me explain to you the different kinds of property. There's public property, there's private property, and then there's personal property. Public property is what is owned by the state. Private property is not privately owned property like people want to make it up. Private property is like means of production. Personal property is what personally belongs to you. So your house, your car, what have you, that would be your personal property. That is not what is taken as collectivization under socialism and communism. It's the means of production. That is what is taken and collectivized.
Right.
Big,
So,
big difference.
so if a Russian citizen under the Soviet Union, they just could not amass any wealth beyond what is required for contentment.
It wasn't like there was wealth caps, because for me, from the Marxist quote, to each according to one's ability, to each according to one's work, which means there is wealth inequality. No one is paid the same. They determine your pay by a lot of different factors, like, competency, your line of work, how easy versus how hard it is, how many people there are in this labor pool, things like that. So you're going to be paid just in accordingly to your work. But is it going to be like to where you're going to be a millionaire, to where you have this lavish home while people are starving? No. You're going to have a good life. I mean, yeah, you'll own a home, you'll own a car, and you'll have enough money to take care of yourself and your family. And hell, if all else fails, if you die, your kids can still inherit stuff. Like, they can inherit your home, you can inherit other people's personal property. That's not what socialism and communism seeks to abolish.
Yeah, so there wasn't, wealth was not hoarded like
exactly.
it is in imperialism.
Under capitalism, yeah.
Capitalism. Now, I find the one thing interesting that I have noticed while watching many movies, documentaries on Netflix. There was one particular movie about the life and career of I guess she was called the Queen of Salsa, Celia Cruz of Cuba. She grew up in East Cuba, Santiago, where the African Cubans, the Black Cubans, retain their culture. That's where Bacardi rum comes from, Santiago. So now, originally. So what happened was, after Batista fled to Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, with all of his mobster money that was given to him, his millions.
He eventually made it back to the United States.
Oh, he did come to the U.S.?
Well, I've read conflicting reports as to what happened, but ultimately he came back here to the United States, and he has not faced any kind of trials or has not been charged with any kind of crimes him and his government committed to the Cuban people. Yeah,
because a lot of famous American mobsters, he requested that they come and run the hotel casinos, because the casinos weren't doing that well, and they turned the casino industry around for Batista, and he was well paid, and when he fled, he left with a lot of money. But the thing is, in the movie, this Celia Cruz decided not to get her family out of there, and they stood there, unfortunately, and that was a big mistake in the Havana area. But the thing about the movie was it depicted the communist regime under Castro, the Comandante, whatever, all the officers. They were cruel. They were corrupt. It's just, I just wonder how much accuracy or inaccuracy was in that movie. Like, for instance, there was one scene where they knocked on Celia Cruz's home, her mansion-like home, and says, the government is taking your home from you because there are homeless Cubans that need a place to live. And of course, Celia Cruz and the whole family flips out. What do you mean? You cannot steal our home. This is our home. Oh, it's my money. I had this home built for my family. So the Comandante says, well, I tell you what, you can buy it back from the government at market value. So,
right.
got even more upset, and then it ended up where she had to do that. Now, that sort of showed corruption within the Castro communist system there, and you know, it just made me think of what percentage of that was true, and you know, how much of it was just propaganda. That Hollywood, that the fat cats wanted to demonize the Castro regime.
Right.
In that movie.
To put it into perspective, that is what is known as collectivization. You know, whenever the new socialist or communist government comes in, they start taking property and make it state property to make it as part of means of production, or to seize it as other kinds of state property, especially for housing. You know, the way you're talking, like, this woman lived in a lavish mansion who probably had like more stuff and more money than what she could really know what to do with it, and she probably stole that money from her workers. So the fact that
she was a mega star in all of Latin America.
So the fact that the new government came in, took her home, and allowed homeless people to live in that, and also took her, and I guarantee they also probably took her money and distributed it, or just seized it as state property to help fund education, healthcare, housing, jobs, etc. I mean, that's evil. How? I mean, granted, they wouldn't do something like that to my house, because I mean, my house is just a 4-bedroom, 2 full bath house. You know, something reasonable for a family, a nice family home.
Right. But if you had a mansion like Joel Osteen, that would be a different story.
Yeah, that is a completely different story, because, you know, when people are living in lavish houses like that, they've stolen money from people in order to have something like that. That's what capitalism does, especially, and also religion, and we'll talk about that here in a moment, is whenever people get pissed off and they form this new government of socialism and communism, and they come in and want that money back somehow, the fact that the person who was stolen from is getting their property back that was stolen from them is evil. How? I don't see that.
And what you said about religion, look at how wealthy the Roman Catholic Church is, and they have their own bank, the treasury. You know, gold, God knows how many bars of gold bullion they possess, and real estate.
But gold is evil.
Well, all I know is you could bury gold in the mud and it never loses its luster ever. You know, but anyway.
If it's all evil, then why they ask for it at the collection plate at church?
Well, the De Beers Mining Company, to me, they're scumbags.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether it be diamonds or gold. That's another talk show. Talk about retail in the capitalist system. Fine jewelry and De Beers controlling the exportation of diamonds. There's so many diamonds being mined. Technically, it is not a precious stone any longer. There's so many diamonds being mined.
Right.
They control the exportation to keep the price up. So, you know, people like commercials like Jared could say, $5,000 engagement ring, diamond tennis bracelet, a diamond is forever. You know, all the girls have orgasm because of how big the rock is. Oh, look at my friend's engagement ring.
But diamonds also can be used for other purposes besides jewelry.
Yes, industrial grade, industrial purposes, yeah.
Yeah, so they're keeping the diamond supply to a minimum so they can maximize profit, because they know if they were to flood the market with diamonds, then the diamond value would just plummet because there would be such an abundance of it out there.
Yeah.
And that's why capitalism is such a illogical system, is the market does not allocate resources the way it should be allocated. And that's also a big difference, is under socialism and communism, it's a planned economy. You know, it's not where the market dictates everything, to where everything is just so irrational, illogical, and there's so many fluctuations to where you could have like, oh, we're having this great time, but oh, we got this next great big depression coming. No, that's
Yeah.
capitalism in the free market for you.
Now, in terms of capitalism and religion, let's go back to the Catholic Church again.
Yeah.
Why does the Catholic Church need to have need to advertise fundraisers to feed the children while they are so filthy rich? Why don't they feed the impoverished children of the world? Why must the average American have to donate? Oh, I mean, they have an immense amount of funds to help the poor and to eradicate poverty throughout throughout the world, but they don't do it.
Well, this is one video that I was talking about Jason Unruhe over at Maoist Rebel News, and I've sent you some of his videos for you to watch.
Yeah.
This is one thing he talked about in his video about Pope Francis. Pope Francis is anti-capitalist, but he's not pro-socialism. In fact, he's pro-feudal. He's reactionary, not revolutionary.
Oh, so he uses the he comes across as being a progressive, saying very progressive things in public, but in reality, he's not all that progressive. He's kind of like the Democratic candidates running now.
That's why another reason why religion and socialism and communism are very antagonistical. But religion is also antagonistical to capitalism because, as I was telling you about how capitalism just did a lot of copy and pasting from feudalism, and basically capitalism is just feudalism 2.0. Just the only differences between it was, control was taken from the monarchy and from the church and placed over to the merchants. And that's another reason why religion doesn't like capitalism, but that's also another reason why they don't like socialism or communism is it seeks to get rid of religion or get rid of organized religion. So if you listen to the way religion is now and the way that people of religion really talk, especially the really devout religious people, yeah, they're anti-capitalist, and they see it as a very inherently evil, corrupt system. But yet, whenever you listen to what they really advocate for, they're extremely right-wing. They're reactionary. They want to undo progress. They want to take us back in time, back to feudalism.
Well, as opposed to the megachurch evangelicals, which are very pro-capitalists, especially when it comes to hoarding or stealing the donation from their parishioners, their followers.
Mhm.
Your Benny Hinns, your Joel Osteens, your Franklin Grahams, Pat Robertson, etc. They're pro-capitalism, but they're only using organized religion as a way to get people to part with their money, to steal.
Yeah, that is why religion is also just why I despise it is, for you to say that money is so evil, then why do you ask for it? It's like, why are you asking for the one thing that you view as evil? But I mean, in reality, money is not really good, but money is not really evil. Money is what makes the world go around. Money has a very dualistic nature. Yes, money can do great things, but money can also do very bad things.
Well, yeah, like a laser beam. A laser can be a very effective deadly weapon, but it can also save lives in surgery. It's like there's two sides to it. The Catholic priest that conducted my mother's funeral ceremony, the church wanted the money up front, the $300 some odd to do the funeral immediately, and they said you get the priest for like no more than 30 minutes. And did you know, as soon as that minute came, I try to ask him a question or two. He booked it. He was out the door.
Yeah, that's one other thing about religion is, for them to be so good on the surface, deep down, it's evil.
Yeah, well, they got fees like a shrink, like a psychologist, where and then bing, your time is up. I don't care how many questions you have. Goodbye, Charlie. You're out the door. See ya. See ya.
Right,
See ya.
right.
Yeah, I mean, they
And it's so hypocritical too.
you want to get married, you got a fee. If your loved one passes away, fee. But there's also, you only get them for so long. They do what they have to do, and then they're out the door. But yeah, and I'm surprised that you always hear about the Catholic Church parishes. We really need to increase donations desperately because our roof is leaking and the building needs a little work here and there. Hey, Catholic Church, you're filthy rich. You can't repair the leaky roofs. You can't call the Vatican and get the funds for the leaky roofs. It's like something's wrong with this picture.
If there was a socialist revolution worldwide and there was religious property seized as state property and sold off to actually have more funds, the amount of wealth that religion makes and how much property they've gotten, like assets, money in bank accounts, etc., it would be in the billions of dollars. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the trillions of dollars. Yeah. Oh no, we can't tax the churches. Oh no, we can't seize church property, especially when people are starving.
Don't tax the churches, but they sure love to stick their Pinocchio nose in politics, don't they?
Yeah. It's like, well, if you want to engage in politics, then start paying your taxes. Like, if I gotta pay my way in, you pay your way in too, asshole.
Yeah, if you want to shut down Planned Parenthood because you think a fertilized egg is a human baby, then you know what? It's about time you start paying taxes like anyone else in your tax bracket.
Well, I'm glad you also brought that because that's another reason why the Russian Orthodoxy and the Soviet government did not get along is, how I told you in the last video, they wanted to halt progress. They wanted to halt progress, especially when it came to science. Religion is very anti-science.
Hey, look at stem cell research. Christopher Reeves could have been possibly saved with no holds barred stem cell research and advancement.
Yeah. So if anyone gets in the way of progress under socialism and communism, they're going to be gotten rid of by any means necessary. I'm surprised that the Russian Orthodoxy was not eradicated under the Soviet Union. I'm really surprised.
Yeah, I mean, saving lives is not a negative thing. It's not a human being trying to play God like the religious zealots like to say. It's actually a good thing. It's actually more Christian to use science and technology to save lives or to make a person's suffering end or to live a better standard of living. It is more Christian to use science to do that than it is to go around condemning science and advancement and technology and say, oh, you're playing God. Oh, really? What would you rather do? All right, so let all the paralyzed people stay paralyzed. Let them all suffer, okay?
God's going to come help them.
Yeah, oh, we'll pray for you. That's what the zealots always say. Oh, by the way, that's what the Blue Devil for Life said to me. That's James. I mean, not James. Progressive Discussions. I will pray for you. Hey, I'm not going to hold my breath.
Right. I mean, that's another reason why religion is so anti-science is science is completely antagonistical to God.
Science could very well be why we're all here. It's very possible we're all just one big extraterrestrial experiment.
I can believe that, but I mean, to just put it in perspective, because I know we're going to be running out of time here pretty shortly.
Yeah.
I'm agnostic atheist. I've been a diehard agnostic atheist for a pretty good while because after seeing, the way the world is and reading the works of Marx, Lenin, and Mao, I have a really good understanding as to why the world is the way that it is. It's not some God versus the devil. It's not this, the puppet masters pulling the strings of humans, determining whether they're good or evil or things like that. I've tried reading religious scriptures. I've tried reading the Bible. I've tried reading the Quran. I've tried reading the Torah and other various religious works, and just they make no sense. They really don't.
Well, Muhammad's original writings were destroyed by the third caliph.
Mm-hmm.
According to Islam, the archangel Gabriel, the messenger, is the same angel that from Judaism.
Yeah. And there's so much copy and pasting from each other.
Yeah, so the third caliph, who was like an extremist, decided to rewrite it, just like the right-wing zealots today are trying to rewrite the original Bible, King James version of the Bible. They want to rewrite everything, and they cherry pick what they like.
Exactly.
Like the part about helping the poor, they leave that out. They don't like that part.
Yeah, and another reason why I'm a diehard agnostic atheist is seeing the way that the world is supposed to be and how God really is supposed to be making this world the way that it is. Seems like to me either A, he does not exist, which I believe, or B, he or she does not give a shit. That's the way I see it. Because if God, he or she does exist, he or she would be looking out for you. He or she would be making sure that, if I created you in my own image, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. I really would be looking out for you. I'd be making sure that you had a roof over your head, you had food to eat, you had water to drink, you had access to healthcare, you had access to education, you had access to government infrastructure, you had access to a job, you have access to all of that. But where really has God been during all this? Sitting out? Not caring? I mean, possibly. That I will go along with if he or she does exist, he or she does not care about us.
Well, for some reason, I'm thinking about that. I could be wrong. I don't think it was The Simpsons. I think it was an episode of South Park where extraterrestrials were where the planet Earth, civilization on Earth, was one gigantic reality show for this planet of extraterrestrials.
I wouldn't doubt it.
And they were thinking, and they were so upset with the outcome, they were thinking of canceling this show and destroying the Earth. It was either, I think it was South Park, but
no, Futurama, Omicron Percy 8.
That was Futurama?
Yeah, it was Futurama.
Oh, thank you for bringing it up. I knew it was one of those adult cartoons.
Yeah. I don't really consider Futurama to really be all that of an adult cartoon. I
No,
mean,
South Park
it's more of an adult cartoon. South Park is a Futurama.
Yeah, South Park is where the people from the future were coming into the orange people. They were looking for jobs, and
they call them goobacks.
They're taking our jobs. They're taking our jobs.
Yeah, I can do a pretty good impression of it. They're taking our job.
Hey, that sounds like some of the people on Eric's Wild Card Wednesday show sometimes, right? Doesn't he get?
I did that too good. I even made myself laugh.
Actually, that was quite good. They're taking our job. Idaho. Was it Stan Marsh's kid or the little Jewish kid? Who did Mr. Hankey appear to? The little Jewish kid, right? What was that, Kyle?
Yeah. Idaho. It's been a while since I've watched South Park. I mean, South Park used to be really good back in the day, but now it's dumb.
Well, they're running out of material. Like Seinfeld eventually ran out of good material. The writers just It's like with pro wrestling, WWE. They're just right. It's just becoming stupid. The storylines they're not great anymore, you know. And
yeah, one last thing, I guess we'll wrap this up since we
Yeah.
allocated an hour and 15 minutes. Another reason why I'm a diehard agnostic atheist is I am of the belief that I don't believe in a God in a traditional sense. If there is a God, it's the universe. Because the universe was here before all of us. Matter came from the universe, and everything we see and experience with our five senses comes from the universe. But here's where science steps in and religion gets thrown by the wayside and should be thrown to the scrap heap. The religion, or the universe, is alive and the universe is conscious. You can feel the universe through all your five senses. I mean, first of all, you can see the universe, okay? You can experience the universe. The universe is conscious and it has energies. And if you were in space and you took your helmet off, for what only reason would you want to do this? But you could probably smell the universe. I'm sure the universe probably has a smell.
And there's black holes out there, and there's billion. There's God knows how many galaxies. Well, they claim there are. I don't know, millions.
And you could touch the universe.
Yeah.
You went up into space, you could probably touch the universe, like put your hand out and touch it. Okay, well, that's 4 out of the 5 senses. And you could probably taste it. You could probably get a little whenever you took your helmet off trying to smell it. So there you go. And your 5 senses right there.
Yeah, there's something called dark matter out there. I watch the Science Channel, all those quantum physicists shows and everything is where they discuss black holes and the death of a star, supernova. This is all part of the realism that you were talking about.
Yeah, but that's the atheistic part of me speaking. I'm not really like I would consider myself an implicit atheist rather than an explicit atheist. I'm basing it purely on what I see, but my opinions can be subjected to change later. I'm not one of these, there is no God, there never has been a God, never will be a God, this, that, and the other. No, I don't go along with that. But where I dive away from the agnostic sense is I think it's unknown and unknowable, but only to a certain point. It's unknown and unknowable because of the way that they are approaching the idea of God. Is they're only looking at it from like one-sidedness. And they're not looking at it in a very heightened, elevated sense of awareness. And they're not really looking at it too deep, so to speak.
I mean, it is possible as an atheist and a man of science to believe that every human being does have this energy, life force that can be a form of spirit that is either reincarnated or travels throughout the universe, just, is able to fly around. I mean,
and science has also explained the life's most important question that religion has failed to just explain. What is the meaning of life? Science explained it biologically, to reproduce. That's the meaning of life.
What's the meaning of life for most living creatures on the planet? I mean, look at the many members, not just insects, other forms of life that have very short lifespans. Their telomeres are not too long. In other words, like a rat. Let's take a rat. A rat was claimed to be one of the top 10 most intelligent creatures on the planet, but the average lifespan of a rat is only a few years. But what do rats do? They bang out a lot of pups.
Mm-hmm.
They reproduce very rapidly. You ever see a set of testicles on a male rat? They're like huge. But I'm wondering, smartest, but they don't live long. But they're one of the top 10 intelligent creatures.
Yes. That is the answer to the meaning of life, to reproduce.
To reproduce. You're here to perpetuate the species, but as far as any individual meaning, most likely not.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it does have individual meaning, but it takes on individual meaning to an individual or a collective of individuals.
Yeah. Well, if you're a scientist, and let's say you're a kid with a genius IQ, and you go on to get scholarships, and you become a great scientist that will improve multitudes of lives through your work. And you get awards, Nobel Prize, this, that, and the other thing, and you actually affect mankind for the better. Now that's great meaning in one life, one human life. If you're just Joe Sixpack that sits in front of the TV and says, "Hey, get me a beer," yeah, what the hell's wrong? How long do I got to wait for my dinner? Or, they're taking our jobs. If you're one of those guys, and then your life, is
doesn't really have much meaning.
Actually, you don't really want those people to reproduce. Yeah, but then.
Yeah, to quote George Carlin, why is it people who are so against abortions are people you wouldn't even want to fuck in the first place?
Yeah, you ever see that? I saw a picket line of local people in the suburbs that were protesting an adult store that sold lingerie, sex toys, whatever. And they were not easy on the eyeballs. Let's put it that way.
Right.
They were, like what George Carlin says. You wouldn't want to get intimate with them, not even if you were drunk.
Right. Last thing, then we'll go ahead and we'll wrap this up.
Yeah.
So this is one question I've gotten before, and this is one that I'm going to think about because it's something I do want to talk about in a future video. Okay, if socialism and communism is so antagonistical to any and all religions, and atheism is so entrenched into the ideology, is there any religions out there that it would not be antagonistical to?
Well, then another follow-up question would be, is there any religion out there that has shown to be anti-progress in science? Probably a great many of them.
This is just coming off the top of my head, and this could probably just be a load of crock of shit. It probably might be once I analyze this later, but if I had to think of one just right off the top of my head, using how much science are they for versus against, how much progress are they willing to allow, and how devout are the followers of this said religion.
Ancient Greece.
Using all of those criteria, I would probably have to pick Buddhism.
Yeah, Buddhism.
The only thing I could think of off the top of my head.
Buddhists, like, when I think of Buddhism, I think of Shaolin monks. I think of people in Tibet, in Thailand. They're very inoffensive, laid back, peace-loving people. I don't. Yeah, you're right. I don't think they would really buck heads with science and progress. And then what I mentioned before about ancient Greece, people who worship Zeus. There were lots of great scholars and men of science and deep thinking. All the famous Greeks that made such a huge contributions. Pliny, Aristotle, so on and so forth. They were men of science, so to speak. Forget about the Catholic Church. They wouldn't let Leonardo da Vinci do anything, or Galileo, or even what's his name, Nostradamus, who was an alchemist and did treat people with herbal preparations, herbal extracts. But yeah, Buddhism. I don't know about Hinduism. No, I would say Buddhism. And I don't know about Norse mythology. I think the Vikings just wouldn't give a fuck. Norse mythology. No, yeah. What would you call the religion of ancient Greece? I don't even know if they ever gave themselves a name.
It would be like ancient Greek mythology, ancient Roman mythology.
Yeah, the Romans.
That would be the religion itself. Ancient Greek or ancient Roman mythology is what.
Yeah, Romans were big on progress and science. They kind of took over where the Greeks left off. Rome. Egypt. Yeah, I would say yes. There are religions that would not buck heads with science and progress.
That's about the only one I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there might be others. The Incas. They did precision brain surgery with scalpels that were equally as sharp as the ones today. You know, there are bits of advanced science throughout Mesoamerica in terms of like astrology. Sorry, astronomy.
And another reason why I draw upon this one is, remember how we were talking about in the previous video, in North Korea, even though they're not really a religious country, they have a lot of Buddhism in their country. I mean, from what I can tell, Kim Il-sung as well as Kim Jong-un, as far as I know, Kim Jong-un have talking with Buddhist monks that are inside of the country for advice on different things and stuff. So it's another reason why I draw it from that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And hell, in fact, when I was telling you that, you know, even though Buddhism is really prominent inside of North Korea, that a lot of North Koreans believe that Kim Jong-un is Kim Il-sung reincarnated. And Buddhism does believe in reincarnation.
You know, there are bubble-headed boobies in the United States that actually believe that Buddha was a deity, that he was a god. He was a man, you know, probably equal to a saint in the Roman Catholic Church. You know, he wasn't a deity at all.
And then the follow-up question I get with that one time whenever I got asked that was, I threw that out as an idea, and I was still kind of hesitant. I'm still just kind of you know, just throwing it off the top of my head, not really thinking about it all that much. But I think another reason why it doesn't really clash with socialism or communism is that Buddhism in itself is not really an organized religion. And another reason why it doesn't really clash is Buddhism takes the fourth path when it comes to religion. You know, a lot of religions are based upon either theism, atheism, or agnosticism. Buddhism takes the fourth way of non-theism, which means whether there is or is not a God, whether it's unknown, it's unknowable, all that is just, it's irrelevant.
Would that be considered a form of earth religion, like the religion of indigenous peoples of America, Native Americans, of Wiccans, Wiccan paganism, like and voodoo, and earth religion, where they're really in tune to the creatures of the earth and the environment? You know, or where they use Gaia, right? Like Mother Earth.
Right. I'm trying to think. I would say no in that regard because, like I said, when it comes to Buddhism, whether there is or is not a God, whether it's unknown, it's unknowable, all that is just, it's irrelevant. So if you were trying to compare it to like Wiccanism or Wiccan, where, there are different gods and goddesses, that really just, it would not make sense to Buddhism. Buddhism would just say, okay, all that really is irrelevant.
Like with Hinduism, where they have thousands of gods and goddesses and demigods, and it goes on and on and on. Buddhism would be the complete opposite of that.
Yeah, it's just Buddha is not worshipped as a god under Buddhism. There are no gods, there are no deities. But someone say, "Oh, that's atheistic because they don't believe in God. There are no gods." But yes, Wyatt.
I just take a wild bath.
Okay, well, I'll be in there in just a minute. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, they do have shrines where they light incense or candles or something, but there's no relics that they worship too. No idols, no images of a deity, so to speak.
Yeah. Did Wyatt get on the webcam at all? Did you see him at all?
No, I just heard his voice.
Okay. All right, just making sure.
All right. So anyway, yeah, so we pretty much said a lot in part one, and then then part two will be at a future date.
Yeah, I'm gonna make some more notes on part two because part two is more of what would be the present day. There would be a bit more to discuss upon and brush upon. I know it really didn't seem like we brushed on a lot, but if you really just took the ideas that we had talked about of the second Bolshevik Revolution, really just thought about them and applied them in a way that, how it was in our timeline versus how things would be different in this alternate timeline known as alternate history. But I'm drawing it, I'm not really just doing it like I'm pulling it out of my ass. I'm doing it as in, okay, let's take historical fact and let's see what could have actually been done different. Let's say this one thing changed, and where would it go from there? And even though I didn't really go into great extensive detail because, that would have been a whole day's discussion, I just brushed on it to try to, not really get bogged down in details and just kind of, keep the focus.
Well, we want to hold the attention of the general population.
Right.
We don't want to lose people, because the average person is just cannot think that deeply. You have to simplify it, and
right.
And then, it's good that we're slowly getting up to the present time, which happens to be it's going to end with this 2020 campaign, and what's going on now. Now you have the American Socialists of America organization.
Things like that will be taking a much different direction in the part two video, because the way that I stopped it is we stopped it at the 1990s, the time when the Soviet Union, it fell, but it also just dissolved. If that makes any sense. That was the time when socialism failed globally, but it dissolved at the same time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the land. I don't know why I thought of it. The song "Land of Confusion" by Genesis with the Ronald Reagan puppet. Yeah. Well, that was Gorbachev, right?
Yes, but in this alternate timeline, Gorbachev does not come to power. Brezhnev does not come to power.
Oh.
So the old Soviet government, when I was telling you about the transition from after Stalin died to social democracy being reintroduced and just slowly chipping away, it got chipped away a little bit, but it was not chipped away enough to where it was the point to where how bad it was under Brezhnev and the sealer of the deal, Gorbachev. Because in that timeline, this alternate timeline, those two never come to power because Khrushchev gets outed.
Yeah, I don't know.
Who this alternate new chairman or chairwoman of the Second Bolshevik Revolution and the new Communist Party of the Soviet Union would be, I honestly don't know, because since there really wasn't that mindset at that time, it's so hard to, do, because it didn't happen in this universe or on this timeline. Now, probably in some parallel universe, something like that would have happened. We'd have had to have gone to that alternate parallel universe to see how it transpired versus how the idea that I threw out transpired, so to speak.
Okay.
That's what made it so difficult. It was a great topic to brush on, to really, make one think, okay, well, if it's really not inherently flawed, that there's really no inherent flaws to the system of socialism or communism, then why did it fall, and how could it have really been saved if that's the case? Well, that's the first part of how it actually could have been saved.
What made it fall? What exactly, pinpointing exactly what went wrong to make it fall? How could it have been saved?
Well, that was what I was able to find through research and jotting down my notes. Is we had talked about all that in the previous videos and seeing how it progressed. I based my ideas on those ideas themselves. Okay, well, if those two ideas or those ideas is what caused it to collapse, then getting rid of those ideas could have saved it.
You think Marxism? You think Scandinavia is the ideal of the ideal evolution of Marxism for today?
Not really,
because they're quite happy. They're quite happy people over there.
Yeah, but they're not really all that happy anymore, as I explained. Yeah, social democracy worked good for a while for them, but now they're paying the price for their complacency and not actually having full socialism in their countries.
Oh, okay.
Because if you notice how right now the progress that Scandinavia had for so long is now being undone. And how it's being undone through terrorism, because ISIS terrorists and other various terrorists are going to Scandinavia to undo all the progress.
Oh, and they're getting in. They're able to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But as I was telling you in the other video, that in whether it's direct or indirect, that the United States is funding ISIS and is supporting ISIS.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if the United States is in cahoots with the Taliban drug lords with the opium in Afghanistan. I mean, nothing surprises me.
Exactly. But yeah, that's why I stopped it right to the 90s, because from the 90s to the whole history of the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s up to the present day, there's going to be more extensive detail. I really can't brush on those as little as I did from the past, because it's the past. We have to take lessons from the past and learn them, but it's what we do here in the present that counts.
Okay. Well, we just like the other shows. They've all been very informative, very enlightening,
right?
Very unique. I've never even heard Cenk Uygur of the Great Young Turks give out information like you have done, or we have done collectively on this show. I mean,
right.
Now he just laughs at his own little jokes and tries to act cute and everything. That's about it. Right. But then again, he can buy and sell to both of us. Only in America. All right.
Right.
But anyway, thank you. Until next time.
Thank you. Comrade.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.